Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Inclusive Arts Special Education Terminology page. This slide content was originally created by Brian Wojcik and Cody Talarico with the Nebraska Department of Education and has since been modified by myself. Starting off with our quote here, "If they can't learn the way we teach, then maybe we should teach the way they learn." Ignacio Estrada. Which he is actually a famous ventriloquist who sought to teach children moral lessons through fun, engaging shows. Because there's endless terminology for working in education, I have divided up the content into key categories: inclusive basics, key acronyms, accommodations versus modifications, roles and responsibilities, and references on this table of contents slide. Feel free to reference this slide as needed for easy access to information following this course. Our first topic is inclusive basics. So, some foundational concepts for teaching inclusive arts are our grounding premise, which is meaning that each student is capable of participating in grade level standards, regardless of their background, diagnosis, etc. Our guiding principle is that each student is provided with equitable, rigorous access to the general education curriculum and individualized support throughout their educational experience. So both of these concepts together are really the building blocks of accessible education. As a reminder, accessibility does not only mean availability. CAS claims that a person with a disability can acquire the same information, engage in the same interactions, enjoy the same services in an equally effective, equally integrated manner with substantially equivalent ease of use as a person without a disability. When thinking about using accessible materials, there are three options. You could acquire them, like purchasing accessible materials from the beginning, or choosing materials based on accessibility. You could also create them following the accessibility principles or standards, or you could use materials that you already have with supportive and assistive technologies to interface and support individual student needs. But for more specific information about implementing the use of accessible materials, I encourage you to try out Brian Wojcik's CEU Canvas course that will be linked on the additional resources section. Moving on to some key acronyms that are used in special education that may be important for you as a general or arts educator to know. Oftentimes, there are so many acronyms to keep track of that it can start to feel like alphabet soup. But here are some simple foundational definitions. So starting off with LRE, or least restrictive environment, meaning the requirement that students with disabilities are educated with peers without disabilities to the maximum extent appropriate. So really encouraging that integration and having all students learn together as much as possible. Our next acronym is FAPE, or FAPE, Free Appropriate Public Education. Means the special education and related services are provided at public expense and without cost to parents, so they are not paying out of pocket at all. And finally on this slide is FERPA, meaning the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And as you may know already, but educators are to maintain confidentiality with students, but in this context, they do have a right to view their 504 and or IEP plans, but being sure to ensure confidentiality. So to learn more, you can also check out the Nebraska Rule 51 Handbook for more information, as we will discuss some of these concepts more in depthly in the next presentation for disability legislation. Here are a few more acronyms that you may find yourself hearing about or being involved in. So some of these, such as IEPs, again, we'll go over in more detail on the disability legislation page, but here's a brief overview. So starting with FBA, meaning functional behavioral assessment, This is the process for identifying the purpose of a student's behavior to develop a support plan. So you won't be the one running this assessment, but is what people will be referring to. IEP is an individualized education program, which is a written legal document developed by a team for a child with disability, outlining their annual goals and services that they need for education. And another one that you might hear other educators referring to or IEP team members is the BIP or BIP, which is the Behavior Intervention Plan. This is a plan based on the FBA, the Functional Behavior Assessment, to address behaviors that impede the student's learning. Moving on to accommodations versus modification, which are also terms you will likely hear when working with students with unique needs. So, accommodations change the how in learning. Essentially, they provide students with equal access and equal opportunity to curricular material as general students. And as stated by the Iris Center at Vanderbilt University, it is a common misconception that accommodations offer an unfair advantage to students with disabilities. But when they're used appropriately, accommodations essentially just level the playing field, allowing students with disabilities the opportunity to perform tasks just as well as students without disabilities. Accommodations are meant to be supports that maintain the expectations of learning, the complexity of task, and the curricular scope of what students learn. So here's a non-extensive list of some accommodations that may be utilized in the arts classroom. This also includes music and theater. So enlarging font size for assignments, using text-to-speech or oral directions, visual aids, printing music on colored paper for visual materials, or allowing the student to present and perform in front of the teacher only if they suffer from high anxiety or something similar. Moving on to modifications. Modifications, on the other hand, change the what in learning. So keep in mind, you may see students that need both or one of the other, but it's not really your role to be the sole determiner of who needs modifications and who needs accommodations, but rather that depends on the IEP team as a whole. But it's important to keep these ideas in mind. So essentially, modifications again change the what in learning. They not only level the playing field, they essentially change the playing field. So these are supports that reduce the expectations for learning, requirement for tasks, and the curricular scope of what a students learn. So again, not for you to determine who needs what, but good things to keep in mind. And here's some examples, again, of modifications that you might see in relation to the arts. So just kind of reducing complexity of assignments in general, having the students send a recording with their notes to the teacher for a presentation, assigning a totally different project for them, providing an alternative piece for a student to sing or play compared to other students, or reassigning students to a different area of the theater based off of whatever the perceived limitations are. Now I will discuss the various roles and responsibilities that both general and arts educators and special educators have. So for art and special educators, we'll go over other specific roles in the next presentation for disability legislation. But here are a few side-by-side examples of the role each educator places. So art educators, being your role, you're probably familiar with, but you are the content experts in your subject area. You're the ones planning the grade level lessons and teaching the curricular content and standards. And even though you're art educators, you're more than allowed to provide input into the development of the student's IEP and offer feedback about how the student's doing, students' performances in your classroom. And since you're contributing to the IEP, or just in general for all students, you're also providing accommodations and modifications, especially for those specified in students' IEPs. Whereas special educators' roles, they're the ones that are the leaders in the development and oversee the application and use of all students' IEPs. They possess vast knowledge of the student's strengths and needs in relation to other areas of learning compared to the arts. They are the ones to provide strategies to differentiate instruction and provide specially designed instruction across all their classes. And even though you are contributing to the IEPs, the special educators will serve as more of that primary contact for parents based off of students' performance and just general questions. But thank you so much for listening to the special education terminology page, and we'll see you in the next video. Here are my references. Thank you.